Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Celadonia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and alive, awake, and doing well on this Monday. Not incredibly early, but, it was a rough weekend with my buddy here, one Flash Zach Celadonia, and we know why it was rough. And we know that all the Insers now are going to jump over straight to football, probably. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you. My Penguins fandom isn't as developed or as severe as my Steeler fandom just yet. So I'm doing okay. I feel for my Penguins brethren, and my heart goes out to them because I know how much it hurts and it stings to see your favorite team go down in the playoffs, early in the playoffs too. That's been a recent trend here over the years. So my heart goes out to the Penguins fans. I'm a Penguins fan, but not as serious as Steelers. So I feel bad for them, and I hope they can do better next year for sure. I think they will. That's just me being optimistic as usual. I know nothing about hockey, but I think the Penguins will do better next year. And yeah, for all the Yinzers who want to come in Steeler season, we're ready for you. It's one big happy family.
One big miserable family. I'm saying that because they're going to just jump past the Pirates. So like nobody wants anything to do with that. Somewhere here on my set, somewhere over here, I have Penguins banner, I have a Penguins sign. You just don't see it because it's this is a Steeler focused show. I wore my Penn stuff on the last show, and I don't know, maybe I gave them some bad vibes, up 3-1. So now everybody's doing the same exact thing as they tend to do even with the Steelers. It's fire the coach, get rid of Gino, get rid of Letang, get rid of Brian Russ, get rid of everybody that's good, and let's just blow this up and be like a non-playoff team. Because
I know, dude, it's crazy how same but different it is when the team loses. It's just like I was scrolling Twitter this morning and I was like, this is just like when the Steelers lose. It's the same thing, but with different names and different people. Everybody wants to blow it up and start over, blame the coach, blame the GM. And like I said, I don't know enough about hockey to offer my 2 cents, but you can see from an outsider's perspective, like, holy crap, this is just like when the Steelers lose. Like, sports are that important to Pittsburgh.
Did you happen to see anything that was like, oh, this is just like the Steelers? Because I actually did see that, and that's what made it come to mind. It was like, oh, just the mediocrity. Everybody's going to say, oh, well, so-and-so was hurt, and they can't do whatever. But, yeah, there's a lot of truth to it when you're playing dirty and you're taking out Sid and stuff like that. And it's just like, and you got like a whatever, like where'd the guy come from? Giant Eagle or whatever, Louis Domingue, although he had his moment in the sun like Duck Hodges. So, oh well. It's the same thing. I can't speak enough. I'm not like a Rob Rossi or anything here covering hockey or what's Josh's last name? I can never say it right, but you know who I'm talking about. Yeah, they got better beat writers, I think. Maybe it's just because I don't know as much about hockey and I'm just ignorant of it, so I don't tease their beat guys just as much. You know what's going on with the Steelers beat right now. We're beating the horse to death. I tried to say we weren't going to talk about quarterback, but since everybody else is talking about it and you had a rookie mini camp, may as well talk about it. So we got to get to that. But let's see. Do we have any more GM news? I can't remember if I mentioned anybody else that had a second interview. Probably mentioned all the usual suspects. Doug Whaley. Was it John Spytek, I believe?
Yeah, Spytek. He got 2 interviews. Yeah,
Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Whaley. Someone else got a second interview too. I'm drawing a blank on that.
Maybe
one.
From the Eagles, like I was saying that. Yeah, somebody there. Brandon Hunt's still in the mix, so we don't have anything big there. We had some rookies. You had a list of some of from the rookie camp, some of the players that were invited and now been offered a contract. I don't know if we have. I think they've been offered a contract, but it's not official transactions yet, so we don't know who else is cut. But you do have a list.
Yeah, it's really, really short. But I did notice that after this past weekend, whenever the Steelers did their rookie minicamp, they invite dudes to show up and show what they got and try to get a contract out of it. Not a long-term deal, but basically another invitation to the next part of camp. And they signed 3 dudes from the tryouts, and these aren't undrafted free agents. They're straight tryouts, like bottom of the barrel dudes. And they signed a receiver, a D lineman, and a defensive back. They could have signed more, but that's just all I saw on Twitter and the interwebs. So the fact that these names like actually came up as a somewhat news bulletin shows me that I guess they're the headliners because I haven't like heard any other names. But yeah, they signed Tyler Snead, who's a receiver from East Carolina University. Nothing really special on tape, just kind of like a possession receiver. Not great size. He's 5'7", 169. So basically me running around out there, running routes, catching passes from Pickett. And Trayvon Mason, defensive lineman from Arizona. From the pictures I saw, he seems like an athletic looking D lineman. Like he's not like some fat ass on the line. He seems like a Steeler defensive lineman, a big, stocky dude, but like not too round in the middle, you know? And a South Carolina defensive back. They won't specify corner or safety, which usually means they're a safety that
Yeah.
has flexibility, but it's Carlins Platel. I hope I'm saying his name right, but he's 6'1", 205, decent size. South Carolina, like I said, so he went to the best school of the bunch here, faced the best competition. But they all have extreme uphill battles to stick with the
Oh
team.
yeah, I know. That's why I didn't make major note. But there is someone we will toss onto the pile here that was a Friday signing that we missed too. Myself and Brian had missed, and it's offensive lineman. Again, not very position specific because he's played 3 different positions here in the pros. Out of Grambling State, I believe, Trent Scott.
Okay.
And Scott, let me see, signed with the Chargers, undrafted free agent out of Grambling in 2018. He's played 53 games with 19 starts in his NFL career. 2 seasons with the Chargers, past 2 with the Carolina Panthers. Let's see, started 3 games at right guard, 8 at right tackle, and 8 at left tackle. So a little position flexibility, which you must have at this level, especially if you're coming out as an undrafted offensive lineman. And you never know, might find a role for him, like they did Chris Hubbard, for example, or Matt Filer got tossed around a little bit there too. But definitely someone. Let me see, someone with some position flexibility that probably offers more than they cut Malcolm Pridgeon in order to make room for Trent Scott. So it's tough to talk about very little about some of these players, especially when they're hanging on undrafted, especially 4 years ago. It's good to see maybe somebody added here who has some type of maybe veteran presence. And of course, we talk about this too. The Steelers playing some of these teams, Chargers, Panthers, or even in the preseason, they get some of their own film and some of their own scouting on them. So that's kind of cool to see. And I'm not saying the guy's going to jump in and be, a starter, but you just never know. You never know who bounces around like an Alejandro Villanueva or something, or they have somebody that's miscast or misused, or you feel you could get something out of, or maybe he's just there to make it more competitive in training camp too. There's always that side of it. You're always looking to upgrade the roster at this time of the year. We've seen Jarvis Landry's going over to the New Orleans Saints. How about the rumblings of maybe a potential Drew Brees comeback? He said he might be playing anything from pickleball to football. He won't rule it out. So you never know what's going to happen.
He couldn't have meant professional football. Not the same Drew Brees that was on the field in 2020. There's no way. I mean, that I said this on Twitter already, but that's just as funny. No offense to him, but that's as funny as Ben saying, "You know what? I think I want to play football again." Like, he doesn't have it, dude. And Ben looked better than Brees in his final year. That's going to sound biased, but I really thought Ben looked better than Brees did in his final year. And I mean, it's time for Ben to hang it up. So Brees not coming back to the NFL. If he does, the only team that I think would even consider it would be the Saints because of obvious ties. But even then, it would feel like kind of like a publicity stunt in a sense, or like, because I don't think he has it anymore, dude. And credit to him for putting that out there to get roasted in the way he did. I'm sure other people are making jokes besides us. But yeah, I can't see him coming back to a football field. I just think he unfortunately faced the harsh reality that a lot of pro athletes will face after they get out of their sport, that it isn't just as easy as transitioning to the booth. You aren't just automatically going to be given this next part of your career because you were good on the football field. And Brees really brought nothing to the table as an analyst. He wouldn't give any kind of severe opinions. He was just kind of like a smiling face sitting
Very
up
vanilla,
there.
very vanilla. I felt,
Yeah.
it was kind of odd. I mean, his numbers were pretty much similar over the last 2 years, and that's because more or less his health. He hasn't been able to stay on the field. He
Yeah.
missed. He only played 12 games in 2020. He's now 43 years old. Also, so that's tough, man. Everybody wants to chase Tom Brady, and make the records. I mean, Brett Favre unretired like 50,000 times too, so you never know. Maybe I think he's still looking to play, by the way. So,
Yeah,
uh,
at least Favre always had the cannon, even up until his final plays. Like he at least had the cannon. Breeze's arm is shot, and yeah, the older you get, the more injuries you get. So I can't blame Breeze for that. But that's just part of the game. That's hand in hand with getting older, is the injuries you accumulate, and then eventually your body doesn't work the same way anymore. So yeah, I don't think I'll be seeing him in the NFL. Hey, you want a name for the people though, real quick here? So this is I just thought about this while you were talking about Scott, Tyler Scott. Is that his name?
Trent. I don't know. I just forgot it already.
Okay. Well,
Um,
anyway, this was around the
Trent
same time.
Scott. Trent Scott.
Trent Scott. Okay,
Yeah.
that's close to Travis Scott. Okay, Trent Scott. So, like 4 or 5 years ago, it was around this same exact time that the Steelers signed Kobe Hamilton, and like he was viewed as like the seventh or eighth receiver in the room. Didn't even bother to look up anything about the guy, but as we all know, he ended up starting in the championship game next to Antonio Brown. It wasn't ideal, and Kobe wasn't great for us, but he had a couple. I remember he had a couple first downs, and but that's the point, is these names that you think may be nothing, whether we like it or not, they may turn into something at some point. So just keep your eye out for something like that to happen again, because it hasn't been, like, it's not unheard of for some guy of this like group of these rookie tryouts to make an impact.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I believe Kobe Hamilton is best known for the Landry Jones walk-off overtime touchdown against Cleveland Browns,
There
a
you
Week
go.
17 game. 27. That might have been 2017. That would have been a reason for them to sit everyone. And that's actually a pretty darn good segue for all of this too. We talked about jersey numbers and stuff. Also, that was our last shindig here. But Kobe was wearing 83, so anyone who's getting upset about Connor Haywood, they also have given out 83 more than once on one occasion here in the past few years. But we're talking quarterbacks, and for everyone who hated Landry Jones, there's just as many people. Everybody loves the backup quarterback or the new quarterback until they have to see them play. And that's going to be our MO, probably going through the entire offseason and talking about this. Everyone else is talking about this, so why don't we talk about this? And I'm trying to figure out where we even start with this. I think I want to start backwards for a second. And we have talked about Kenny Pickett and Chris Oladokun, the two draft picks. And people are talking about, why did the Steelers draft two quarterbacks? Oh, that just means Mason Rudolph's going to be off the team. That just, some of this is just kind of nonsense. And trying to figure out where Oladokun fits into all of this. 7th round pick. How many picks down? He was 200 something. I'm going to
Yeah,
find.
he was towards the very, very end, like seventh round. They picked him so that he couldn't sign somewhere else. And would you blame Chris Oladokun for that? Doken? Shit. Oladokun? Because he like you saw your team, the Steelers picked a quarterback first round. They signed Mitch Trubisky in the offseason. They still have Mason. So if you're an undrafted free agent quarterback, the Steelers is probably one of the last places you would consider. Even though ironically we don't have like a starter in place, there's a three-man battle going on in camp. So I doubt they would have been able to coerce Oladokun into coming in here. So I think the draft pick was well spent. And I was actually just explaining this to a good friend of mine, and he just genuinely asked, he's like, why did the Steelers spend the draft pick on another quarterback? And I told him, I said, well, dude, they were going to go to camp with four quarterbacks regardless. That's always been their style. That's always been what they want to have going into camp. And if Haskins was still alive, he would be your fourth quarterback. So they needed a body to be quarterback four. Even last year, they brought in the Slippery Rock kid. Maybe that was 2 years ago, but they don't go in with just three quarterbacks. And Chris Oladokun does a lot of things well. A late round pick, sure. Had to transfer, sure. But he fits the modern day style quarterback. He's very athletic, can throw on the run, can do read options. I touched on this briefly before, but I think they drafted him. Like his role is going to be this practice squad All American. This guy who the defense can practice against, that can simulate what Lamar does, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, like etc. Pretty much every quarterback nowadays. So Oladokun will be able to give you a good look on practice squad, and But I mean, people that are saying it means Mason's out of town, that's giving him a lot of credit, dude. And I'm as excited for these kids as anybody, but he has to do a lot and prove a lot and show a lot to have the Steelers comfortable enough to just send Mason out of town. And that's coming from me, Mr. Mason hater. So like it would take a lot for Oladokun to kick Mason off the roster. I think he's destined to just be this like secret weapon in a sense for us that never gets deployed, but we have him in house as a guy to practice against for the defense. So they can practice, not over pursuing. Because if you like go too fast at a quarterback who's rolling out, he can put a move on you and get around you, like Lamar has done so many times. So the pick has just grown more and more on me. It's a 7th-round pick, but I think it was a smart pick, really.
No, it's actually very smart, and that's what I'm trying to get across to folks is it doesn't mean that since they added a guy in the 7th round that they're going to make the roster. And I had to go back and point out a bunch of different 7th round picks. Oh goodness, some people even had like a list of wide receivers. So they were talking about the game. I don't know if I brought this up to the show before or not, but it was like a game from 2016. That same Kobe Hamilton. And they were talking about, wow, look at this. And then they got a few years out of all these guys they drafted. And they were listing like Darius Hayward-Bay. I'm like, they did not draft Darius Hayward-Bay. DeMarcus Ayers. DeMarcus Ayers that was it. That was his one season and he was out. You know what I mean? It's it's very competitive, and obviously the Steelers had Juju Smith-Schuster come on and things like that too. So it forces a lot of, what do you want to say, transition on the depth chart, transition on the rosters. So Oladokun here, pick 241 out of 262 picks total in the NFL draft. Now, his numbers, let's see. Obviously he transferred more than once. He began at USF, University of Southern Florida in the Bulls. He started 2 games back in 2018, 22 of 44, 285, 3 touchdowns. Oh, no one ever says any negatives. I'm trying to look this up, by the way. Let's see. Played 19 games, including 9 starts at Samford, not Stanford, Samford. That is the FCS school where Devlin Duck Hodges played with the air raid style of offense. And he played, saw action in all 12 games in 2019, 169, nice, of 272 for 2,064 yards, 18 touchdowns. He rushed 127 times, 493, and 8 touchdowns. That's where you're really looking at saying, whoa, this guy can move with his feet. And he tied a school record 6 touchdown passes and 7 total touchdowns, 1 rushing in 2018 game at Tennessee Tech. Oh, let's see. What else do we have here? Selected to play in the Blue-Gray Football All-American Bowl as a prep senior in high school. So he was also kind of sought after coming out. Now, however, when you're taking a look at the NFL.com profiles, he had a prospect grade of 5.69. Maybe not so nice, even though we got the decimal there. We've played around with this. Well, the guy that got signed was wearing that in the rookie camp, or the guy they brought on.
Trayvon Mason. Yeah, he's 169, yeah.
We're at 69. Everybody pointed that out right away. For if you don't know what we're talking about, then look it up. There's Google. Anyways, just be careful what you Google.
If you don't know what we're talking about, get out of the house more. We're on a TV.
Get out of the house. Don't have to get out of the house with the internet. I mean, COVID has proven that. So, but it does say, because of his prospect grade, that he's a candidate for bottom of roster or practice squad. So that's kind of like where we're saying that. Now,
they nailed that, yeah.
Yeah, and there's folks that are like, I've seen everything out there. They're wrong. Steelers only keep 2 quarterbacks. Steelers always keep 4 quarterbacks. No. Not all teams keep 3 quarterbacks. New England Patriots are famous for this. They would keep 2, especially when they only had Tom Brady. Now, when Tom Brady, everybody's going to go back and say, well, they had Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett. Yeah, they knew Brady was the deflate gate. He was being suspended. So that's why they had 3. Typically, they did not. And I mean, it's been pretty much, it was like Brian Hoyer, who's been around for the longest time. Not all the time. The Colts did this, and it bit them really bad, too, when Peyton Manning got hurt years ago. And they only had like Curtis Painter. There's a throwback name for you. I think Curtis Painter was the backup there. So, no, not all teams do that. And not all teams stash a quarterback on the practice squad either. The reason that you've seen the Steelers do it in the last 2 years, they didn't really do it last year. Most people forget Josh Dobbs was on injured reserve. He wasn't eligible to return. He was hanging out. They did use him as almost kind of like, it looked like a player coach. So they valued his input on the sideline. Otherwise, he wouldn't be there. We've talked with many players have been on injured reserve. They don't travel with the team. Sometimes they're not even like invited or go to the games. It doesn't happen that way. And it doesn't have to be somebody that's like bottom barrel, injured reserve, undrafted guy or something like that. Like let's say Rico Bussey, I think, was somebody that was in that category last year. But it depends. It depends on who you are. Like obviously Ryan Shazier was around everywhere. So, but it's a whole different level of player there that's allowed to hang on the sidelines. Big Ben, same way. But it's not your typical MO is to just buy a plane ticket for every single guy who's hurt. So anyways, getting back to that is the whole point of for quarterbacks. If they have an expanded practice squad like they've had the last 2 years impacted by COVID protocols, then they've been stashing specialists such as punters and kickers out on the practice squad too. So yes, he could be a practice squad guy. It doesn't mean he's forcing somebody else off the roster. That means Chris Oladokun in this case. However, when we take a look here, pulling up the old graphic from the other day, the Steelers 17-game schedule here for the 2022 season, and you take a look at who could Chris Oladokun best emulate here on the field. I could say Zach, I think even Joe Burrow to a certain extent. You could have him running with that. Mac Jones, probably not as much. If Deshaun Watson's there, it doesn't matter because they also have Brissett. They also have Josh Dobbs. They brought in somebody else too. Browns have, aside from Baker Mayfield, who's still in limbo there. So it gets the Browns. The Jets, Zach Wilson, and not so much. Josh Allen, absolutely. There's somebody that's a mobile quarterback. Buccaneers.
Zach's pretty mobile. Zach's an athlete. I would argue.
Yeah,
that,
but the Jets suck. So it's like
they do, but he fits like the MO. Like Mac Jones isn't a mobile guy at all. But yeah, Josh Allen is like my wet dream at quarterback. I love his style, and yeah, he's very mobile and very athletic. He's obviously beefier than Chris Oladokun, but Buffalo, that fits. You can help practice for Josh Allen's escapability. He doesn't really run too many options voluntarily. They will, but he escapes all the time and uses his mobility and his freakish athleticism to his advantage. So, yeah, they can practice against the Josh Allen simulation for sure. I see the Eagles on there, Jalen Hurts. Perfect.
I just skipped over Tua also with the Dolphins.
Yeah, I don't really
if he's
like
there.
He runs a lot. Yeah, he runs a lot. So yeah, Tua, that works too. Yeah, I mean, it's all over the schedule, man. There's
Jameis Winston, maybe not Matt Ryan so much. Maybe Mariota with the Falcons. Obviously, Lamar Jackson. What do the Panthers got going on? Probably Sam Darnold, although they could have our other guy we didn't like that was brought on there.
By week 15, they might turn to Corral. But, yeah. I mean, Darnold's got some Jets.
Yeah. He had some rushing touchdowns. I had him on my fantasy team early in the year before he got hurt. He was actually doing it almost made me feel stupid for some of the takes I had on him. But
for a split second, me too. Yeah, right. Then after week 3, it was all downhill for Darnold.
Yeah, Derek Carr, Lamar Jackson, and Deshaun Watson again. So over half of your games, you're looking at a mobile quarterback of some sort that's that he's going to fit the bill for. So I don't know. It's like at the very least, that's going to be maybe his role on the team. And we'll take a look and see. We got some. I wanted to pull up at least like a picture of this. He's looking pretty good there. Pretty dapper. He's got the gold chain going.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. He's all trimmed and lined up. So everybody looks good with the draft hat too, I have to say. That's funny.
Neck full of water dripping on his shirt. You know what I mean? Look at that. The chain popping. I like that.
Not quite the Sauce Gardner with the actual bling, like sauce bottle, whatever that was supposed to be.
Yeah, that was so funny.
He would have been better in Pittsburgh because of the Heinz like tie-in, I think. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I'm not trying to dump all over Oladokun. He's definitely somebody that could be a developmental player. He's definitely somebody that can help the team. And to be completely honest, if they're able to hold on to him and retain him for next year, you don't know what's going to happen with everyone not named Kenny Pickett right now. I mean, Trubisky's contract is one that's really could be a one and done year, and Mason Rudolph's only signed for one more year. So this is somebody that could be QB3 a year down the road. You mentioned just about everything else I was going to say about him, and I don't know that we really carved out 15, 20 minutes to talk just about Chris Oladokun, other than I don't think he bumps the other 3 off of the roster. He would have to have a tremendous training camp and preseason, and that's doing it with guys that aren't going to be on an NFL roster and guys that he's probably not.
He's not gonna get the same chance as the other 3 running with the starters. Kenny, Mitch, and Mason will all get their chance with the starters. You won't see Oladokun doing that. So yeah, his opportunities are going to be limited. And at the end of the day, it's a business. We can be as nice as we want to these players, and I'm guilty of this all the time. People often tell me that I'm not critical enough, and I think everybody's going to be good. But you got to be critical at certain times. And Oladokun's a seventh round pick. You know, the cards are stacked against him. Nothing against the kid. I hope he does well, but I don't feel bad for a guy who's going to carve out a role on the practice squad and collect six figures a year to simulate the opponent and have fun and be a part of a team. And like, I mean, you're making six figures. Like I just said, that's going to set him up for a long time. And who knows if he sticks in Pittsburgh for a couple years, gets his footing down, maybe eventually he can go on and be a backup somewhere else and work his way up a depth chart. But yeah, that's part of what we do is sometimes you got to drop the hammer and be serious with this. And I don't think Oladokun has a clear path at all, or any path really, to make the Steelers final 53 unless injury occurs, God forbid. So I don't think it's necessarily mean what we're saying. I think it's just the truth. I think Oladokun has a fine career set up ahead of him. It just has to be on the practice squad for the time being.
Yeah, and just think about it too. Like we've mentioned JT Barrett on the roster before. They had I think Ray McLeod was even taking some snaps as a scout team quarterback. Obviously Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's so funny. I remember.
Well, they had who was the other wide receiver? Man, this is going back. Was it Tyler Murphy? Is that the right name from Boston College?
Dude.
Yeah, he was college quarterback. He was college quarterback. I think he got called up maybe to the 53 once somewhere along the line, but yeah, he was practice squad mostly. But yeah, there's some names you throw back. This is, the Steelers have been doing this for many years, and other teams they're going to emulate or try and do the same thing. They're like, oh, you know what? That's a good idea. It is a copycat league. So that's why you draft a guy in the 7th round. It's not to dump on him. And I've been told, same as you, sometimes too much sunshine and rainbows. I'm not trying to be sunshine and rainbows. It's like some people use objectivity as a license to be a jerk, and there's no reason to do that either. So I want to see everybody succeed, and that's what makes it tough for the rest of this conversation. So I think I'm going to bounce to Mason Rudolph first, just because he's the hotter topic. The hotter topic because he's the guy who's been here. He's the only guy. Let's go back to 2019. Do you want another repeat of this season? You got Randy Fichtner as the offensive coordinator with no quarterback coach. And you go into the season, you had a cool training camp. You find this Duck Hodges guy, and everybody's like, oh, camp phenom. And I'm kind of like, I'm rolling my eyes a little bit. And I got out there and I saw him, and I'm like, hey, not too bad. Better than, Dustin Vaughn or some of these other names, or Bart, whatever his name was, from like Wisconsin that barely played. And you
Bart
see
Houston.
Yeah.
Best
that
names
was
in football.
I want definitely not Bart Starr. But yeah, I mean, they've even brought in before, like you said, guy from Slippery Rock, or I believe it was Watson's backup came in from Clemson and was at rookie camp several years ago, like 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, that's Stout. That's Stout's kid, the Steelers quarterback from the 70s, or Bradshaw's backup.
Yeah, 80s. Yeah, but same difference. And it's like, but anyways, to my point, and I think he was only in the rookie camp, but as soon as you add somebody to the roster, you add Zach Mettenberger, you add Paxton Lynch, and it's always like, play the next guy, like down the line here. Grab this guy. Oh, geez. Speaking of which, Jordan Ta'amu is still playing, kicking rocks over in like the USFL. And it's like, add this guy, add PJ Walker or whatever. And you saw that didn't turn out so hot with the Panthers last year. I'd be great for him to be able to play up to get that kind of opportunity, but you don't want to go back into the 2019 type of realm. I mean, I still don't know, even if Josh Dobbs would have hung around, that he would have fared any better than Duck Hodges or even Mason Rudolph did. Randy Fichtner's offense, you had a lot of dink and dunk. You had a lot of preseason type players playing. They grabbed Deion Kane off of the Colts practice squad. You had Tevin Jones, who dropped 2 passes in that game and got cut. You had Dante Moncrief, who dropped a bunch of passes and got cut before the trade deadline, so he didn't impact the compensatory pick formula, and they were able to get something for him. Juju missed a bunch of games. Deontay Johnson missed that game, got knocked out of that game in Cleveland, bleeding out of his ear. James Conner missed a bunch of time, and then Benny Snell was hurt. Then you had Trey Edmonds and Kareth White, and Tony Brooks-James, who's also, I think, in the USFL. Also, he was kicking around with the Falcons last year, I think. So, it's just these weren't like the all-time. Oh, Johnny Holton. I forgot Johnny Holton, too, who was like
Oh yeah.
Colby Hamilton 2.0. Nick Vannett, you had to go and trade for a tight end because all you had was Jesse James and, everything that Vance McDonald was getting hurt. And it's just like, it was just a complete disaster aside from not having personnel. Mason Rudolph had never taken an NFL snap, but he's your top guy because he just won the quarterback battle. But that was year 2 for Mason Rudolph. He wasn't a rookie. He was new to being a starter, but he wasn't a rookie. They sat him a year. They sat him even behind Dobbs. He won the job. They trade Dobbs away. They end up with Hodges. All of a sudden, Ben Roethlisberger gets hurt in the second game right after they make this trade because they feel they're set. You got your franchise quarterback. You got the guy you're developing for the future. And then your guy developing for the future gets knocked out by Earl Thomas. And now all of a sudden you're stuck with the guy who is the camp phenom that's undersized, went undrafted, played at Samford, and he made a pretty good go of it, and he had a good Cinderella story, but in the end, 6 interceptions in the last 3 games cost the Steelers a shot at making the postseason, regardless of all of that turmoil that I just went through. The reason I mention all of that is do you want to go through it again in 2022? And it doesn't mean that you're going through it because Mason Rudolph is going to be the guy who's playing. It means that because you could be an injury away from Chris Oladokun being on the field and being your starter, having never taken a pass. Kenny Pickett, okay, if Kenny Pickett ends up out there like Ben Roethlisberger did, Ben's rookie season, Tommy Maddox, Charlie Batch, Ben Roethlisberger. Ben was the QB3. I understand. That's Bill Cowher territory still, not Mike Tomlin, but that's the way the organization operates. And they're probably thinking a lot of the same way, although things have changed with collective bargaining and everything else. You may be more pressured getting that cheap rookie contract on the field sooner than later, but it's not like Mike Tomlin is on the hot seat like some of these other coaches around the league. So how that comes back to Mason Rudolph is that he's the guy who's been here the longest. He's been in Matt Canada's system. He's has some rapport with the other players, and it's somebody that they did invest a 3rd round draft pick for, even trading up over a pair of the Bengals picks in order to go get him. You imagine Mason Rudolph would have been with the Bengals. And could you even imagine like if they had the same type of success? I mean, I'm not saying he's Joe Burrow, but it in a world like that, you just never know. Maybe they don't have those.
I wish Mason was on the Bengals. Are you kidding me? Yeah, give me 100%.
Be easy to make fun of. Everybody makes fun of him because Myles Garrett threw a helmet at him. It's like, yeah, let's not make fun of Myles Garrett. You know what I mean? Come on, that's kind of stupid. But he's been snake bitten with the injuries. His last couple starts weren't terrible. I don't care what you say about the Lions. That Lions game finds out 8 o'clock at night that he's going to be playing. He has no walkthrough, no practice, no nothing. And it's playing in inclement weather. The offense actually scores on the first drive of that game. When he played the week before and 8 starters were out or the year before, that final game of the season against the Cleveland Browns, where the Browns had to absolutely win. Guy threw for over 300 yards in that game, 2 TDs. I mean, people forget about that type of stuff. So it's not to say that he's absolutely terrible, but as you're planning, make your best laid plans. At least they have 3 people in place here, and I want all 3 of these people in place because you just never know what happens with any of them. So I'm not kicking Mason Rudolph out the door just yet. I think he's a valuable piece to all of this because obviously we're going to get into talking about this, but my stance on Kenny Pickett and not wanting to rush the rookie on the field.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The thing with Mason is I'm just so over it with him. I've seen enough. You say you've not seen enough, and some people haven't seen enough, and I get that. Yes, I'm shaking. Yes, I've seen enough of Mason, dude.
10 games?
I really have.
10 games is enough?
10 games is enough for me. Yeah, he's 5-4-1. That's enough for me.
Okay, so that hold on a second. That is that's a BS stat as far as wins and losses, because one of his losses, a loss that's on there is him starting against the Ravens, getting knocked out, and then Duck Hodges doesn't lose that game either. Juju Smith-Schuster technically loses that game, but it goes on to Mason Rudolph's record that way. And the other way around too is he starts a game in Cincinnati that they end up winning when he gets pulled and Duck Hodges goes and throws a touchdown pass. It's the only thing that the offense does the whole game. So the scales of balance do go both ways, but I hate looking at that. It's the same thing. I used to look at the Landry Jones record or whatever, and I'm like, man, this is so all over the place. He got a win because he played 3 snaps against the Browns, hurt his pinky or something, and then Ben Roethlisberger came in and set all those backup records. So anyways, go ahead, carry on. I had to point that out, though. I had to point that out.
Yeah, I wasn't. You said 10 games, so then I had to point out the record that he put up. 10 games is a lot. I know he's had his circumstances and I know he's been injured. I'm the first to admit that I thought Mason had it for a minute when he was playing the Ravens. I remember that game vividly. After Mason got the go-ahead nod to be the starter for the year after Ben got hurt, he fared well against the Seahawks, the game that Ben got hurt, and then against the Ravens, I believe Mason was 9 of 10, 10 of 11, something like that, right before Earl Thomas knocked him out. And as Earl Thomas knocked him out, I remember physically standing up off of my couch and yelling at my TV, "Shades of Big Ben!" because he broke the pocket and he found James Washington for a crucial first down. It was
Yeah.
3rd and long. It was an awesome play. He hasn't been the same since. And harsh reality is guys get injured, guys get dinged, guys take big hits, and they're never the same. Mason, the next time he got a chance to come in, he fared decently well against the Jets coming in as a substitute for Duck Hodges. And then he got hurt again. And I don't think that we can keep using that as like, oh, well, let's just give him another chance. Like, he got hurt here, he got hurt here. I think Mason is what we've seen. You mentioned how versus the Lions, it wasn't a bad performance. It really wasn't. Versus the Browns when he got to start, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. I expect solid play from my backup quarterback. I expect a guy to be able to come in and win you some games, lose some games, win some games. The fact that Mason has won some games and made some good throws isn't enough for me to be like, okay, this guy deserves the chance to start. Like this guy's a future franchise quarterback. You don't say he's a future franchise quarterback, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't see this long-term successful career for Mason. I don't. I think he can be a successful backup. I'm happy if he wants to be the backup, but I don't see how you can, not you specifically, but look at the start of his career and the time that he's been here and continue to believe that there's some light at the end of the tunnel for Mason Rudolph. I did some not research, but I did some Googling just to look at like quarterbacks that I feel like kind of fit his mold, like skill level, ceiling, all that stuff. And I found some stuff that really isn't encouraging to make me think or feel any better about Mason. You know, I went back and looked up a couple guys. Andy Dalton was 9-7 as a rookie, 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. It's a pretty impressive rookie season. And he amounted to nothing. Dalton amounted to absolutely nothing. Baker, 12-17, his first like 20 games. Then he had an 11-5 season, 27 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 22 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And Baker sucks. Jared Goff, 0-7, 11-4, 13.
Oh, come on. Don't put him in Jared Goff territory.
I am.
Andy
I'm
Dalton,
putting him in
that's
Jared
already
Goff
pretty
territory,
bad.
dude. I'm putting them right there because they're the same. They aren't really good athletes at the quarterback position, and I don't want a guy like Jared Goff, Andy Dalton, Mason Rudolph, Drew Lock. Like, I don't subscribe to that style of quarterback anymore. That's where all of this is rooted in. Does Mason have talent? Can he make throws? Yeah, I'm not too ignorant to admit that. But I don't see this future quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mason Rudolph, as any type of reality, unless he has to come in because somebody's hurt.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. I'm glad you, man, nailed it right there, buddy. Because I was going to say, right now, the way I view this is he would need like a Tom Brady set of circumstances with Drew Bledsoe in order to get the proper opportunity here, I believe, unless he just wows everyone. And let's say Mitch Trubisky doesn't, or Kenny Pickett has to have like some meteoric like rise. There's all kinds of things that can happen here. And I think he'll compete, but you mentioned a lot of names, and the side effect of that is that there are some players that are worse than the players that you just named, and there are some players that will be starting that are just maybe in the same category or league. I mean, I don't think much of Marcus Mariota, and more than likely he's going to be a starting quarterback again this season. That's because there's 32 teams and there aren't 32 starting NFL quarterbacks, but you got to trial some of these guys or retread some of them while you get the other ones up to speed and hope that the next guy's the guy. And my opinion of Baker has been up and down all over the place, and I know he played hurt last year, but to kind of throw that on the Mason pile here. So when he played those first 4 games of 2019, 63 and 94, 67% completion percentage. I understand some of that dink and dunk. 646 yards, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 102.5 rating. Only took 3 sacks. For such an immobile guy, he does not take sacks, and that's like a big thing. Everybody thinks you got to run away from the quarterback because you're just going to have a statue standing there, or almost 40-year-old Big Ben that just can't move like he used to. And that's not necessarily the case. Yeah, this was 2019. So those were
mine was better.
Well, was it though?
Yes.
In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. I mean, they didn't have a run game in 2019. That was the whole thing in 2020. I mean, that happened too. But again, some of that was injuries also. So, but he doesn't take the sacks. He just doesn't stand there and take the sacks. And the offensive line, yeah, DeCastro, healthier, sure. Pouncey, we saw Pouncey throwing balls all over the place the last few. Unfortunately, I don't know what was going on. Pouncey, man. Talk about a guy who took some injuries. No wonder he wanted to hang it up when he did, made his money, got out, got his time. I mean, I can't blame him in those set of circumstances.
Yeah, no, the guy wants to be able to walk and enjoy his life with his kids. So I don't blame Pouncey at all. He's had some serious injuries. And he started to decline a little bit, so it was time for Pounce.
Yeah, playing center too, man. You're your head's right there. You're exposed all the time. I mean, what the heck? But yeah, when he came back, was he necessarily the same player? I'm not going to say he was. At the same time, in Mason's career versus Ben's, I don't think they were allowing Ben Roethlisberger to throw the ball 36, 35, 38, 44 times in a game without the supporting cast around him, even starting out. I mean, they just went pass happy with this guy. So when you went up until you had that Thursday night Cleveland game, which was set up for failure, you're on the road. It's the same thing I'm talking about this season. The road teams don't do well on Thursday night, usually. Mm-hmm. And then you had James Conner and Juju coming off injury, and they get re-injured in the game because of the short week. It was just a comedy of errors. But you had Mason still goes over 68, 109, 62.3 completed. This is 3 games now. 684, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. Took 6 sacks though this time, but they did play against the Rams and Aaron Donald. So you have that tossed in here as a little bit of the asterisk. You had the really bad game against Cleveland, where he had 1 touchdown to 4 picks, didn't complete. Actually, with the Rams game, this is where it starts to decline, because the Rams game is where he actually went down sub 60%. He did against Miami a little bit too, maybe playing it safe, but he completed almost over 74% against the Colts in the middle there. But they won 3 games in a row. Then they lose against the Browns. Has that whole incident that happens. He's kind of shell-shocked, like a pitcher, like a goalie, like a goalkeeper in other sports. Tomlin pulls him in that Bengals game. He doesn't end up playing over the next few games. Duck Hodges makes 1 good pass on a very bad DB play, where James Washington, probably Washington's only highlight as well, has like that 70-yard touchdown. So, hey, you take a W where you can get it, and Mike Tomlin, kind of ruthless. He's willing to pull where he needs to pull, and we're going to get in that, like, does he play Kenny Pickett and then pull him if things aren't working properly? And how much we've talked about how much of a mess that could be. We talked about the Bears and Justin Fields and even Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, I don't think we would do that. I don't think Tomlin and the Steelers would do that, which I know you're saying they wouldn't. I don't think they would. I don't think there's a reality where Kenny Pickett gets the job and gets pulled. That would have to be a 4 or 5 game loss streak for Kenny to get pulled, or he's playing abysmally, like interception, sack, interception. Then he would get pulled. If he gets the job, I think it's his for the year. Let him sink or swim. And I hear you, dude, loud and clear. To me, it sounds like you're describing a good backup quarterback. All these up and downs and these stats Mason has had, and moments of looking good and then moments looking bad, that is a backup quarterback through and through. And I know his completion percentage. I know it's 61.5%. I didn't want to just talk out of my ass coming on the show today, so I tried to look at some stuff. And his completion percentage of 61.5% of his career, it's right there with those guys that I was just mocking him with, basically.
Yeah, but you missed one in that whole group, though. You mentioned Mitchell Trubisky. Is right in that same category.
That works perfectly, because that also ties into why I think the situation Kenny walked into is perfect for Kenny. It'd be one thing if we had an established veteran with multiple wins under his belt, winning seasons, an incumbent starter, a good quarterback. He's going into a room with Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, and I jumped on the Mitch train as fast as anybody when we signed him. But those are 2 dudes that he can definitely beat out. I strongly believe that. And no offense to the 2 of them, but neither one of them are like this illustrious quarterback.
No, I'm totally with you on that thought train.
And thank you. And Kenny, the situation is just there for the taking for him. And Mason with the 61.5 completion percentage for his career, that's not bad. Baker is 61.6, Dalton is 62.2, Goff has 67.2, Drew Lock is 59.3. So he's like right in that group with those guys. That's what you can get. Like the best Mason Rudolph possible, in my opinion, can come in, win a couple games, he'll lose a couple games, and that'll be your story of your season in a nutshell. Don't know if you'll make the playoffs. You'll have some moments where you'll win some games and you'll lose some games. And to me, that is just not a starting quarterback. That isn't something that I can passionately get behind. Yeah, he's a good-looking guy. I see the chin line, the chiseled jawline, and the dimple on his chin. Good stuff. He's got a nice dating record, and he throws a good deep ball. He does throw a good deep ball.
Yeah.
Those aren't enough things for me to think that he can just keep Kenny Pickett at bay. I really think Kenny can beat him out.
Oh, no. I don't think that he's going to keep Kenny at bay necessarily. I think you're in the right thought process here. It's who's going to start this year. And the reason I mention that with Trubisky is that most of my, when you say apprehensions with him is like, yeah, he did this good. The 61% or whatever you throw out there, that's either for a season, that's for a career. Some of that's skewed because these guys come in as backups or they play partially. And so I try to look at it in bunches of games like I just did there. And those kind of groupings of games, 10 games, I'm not going to say I know who Mason, I almost said it like the Yinzers do, Mason Randolph. You ever hear that at any of the games?
Of course.
Good God. Oh, Randolph, or they make the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer joke.
And the NFL, my dad always says this, man, the NFL, he didn't make this up, but it stands for not for long. Not to be mean to Mason, but he's been here since 2018. We're going on to the 2022 season, so he's been here a long time, and the coaches have seen him for 4 years. He's gotten chances to start, albeit the injuries suck. And I started this whole rant with I believed Mason had it when I saw him start originally in 2019, and he looked good against the Ravens. It's just that it seems like his confidence and everything is just shook with him. And I don't know if he'll ever be able to recapture it. If he is, great, but he still doesn't fit what I look for in a quarterback, i.e. athletic.
Excuse me. I wish. I don't know. He scooted around okay. Hold on a second. I got to pull that up, actually.
He does. Yeah, he's got a couple big runs under his belt. He's running for his life. Blind squirrel.
Well, yeah, look at the offensive line last year. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
So here, that's a good point. It's like when everybody wants to bring up the failures of Ben Roethlisberger weren't just Ben Roethlisberger. It's this guy, it's this guy, it's this guy, it's these players that are around them. This other guy, this dude's a bum. Then when it's Mason Rudolph, it's Mason Rudolph. He's complete garbage. And it's like, come on, extend the same type of logic when you defend one guy versus attack the other. Have some consistency. I'm not trying to say that Mason is Ben or on the same level, but older Ben, that Lions game was Pat Freiermuth and Deontay Johnson fumbling the ball, and maybe some questionable coaching calls. And it's playing the Lions in inclement weather after they've already been on a bye week. Things of that nature that end up happening. And still, even so, let me see. I had it up here, actually. He did get in against the Chiefs, just 5 of 8, 35 yards in that kind of blowout game. But 30 of 50 passes. You're letting this guy throw the ball 50 times. I understand it's overtime also. 60% completed, 242, touchdown and a pick. 70.6 is the rating. It bounces out with the turnover. And let's see, 4 carries, 36 yards. I mean, for the people that wanted Teddy Bridgewater, that's Teddy Bridgewater numbers right there.
Yeah, for sure. Put Teddy in that group. Teddy's in that group. Yeah, that Drew Lock, Jared Goff, Baker, Dalton, Teddy Bridgewater for sure. Yeah, throw him in there. Absolutely. It's just these guys can start NFL games, but they're not gonna get any fan base. They're not gonna get any fan base excited. None of them. And the football is deeper than that, but that's just the kind of quarterback that I lump Mason in with. And some would say the true haters that you're talking about who blame him for everything, they're going to say I'm being generous, putting him in with Jared Goff and Baker and Dalton. But I think that's about like what his career has shown.
That's absolutely fair. But the difference is like Teddy Bridgewater has 63 starts in his career. I think you have a little bit better of an idea who a player is when they have that many starts. Mitchell Trubisky has like 51, I think. Let me see here. 83 starts for Jared Goff. I mean, that's you got a little bit bigger of a picture. Doesn't mean that Mason's going to sink swim, but my whole point is everything you just mentioned is a reason to keep him on the roster in case of worst case scenario. So now
Yeah,
you,
he can stay. I'm not trying to send
yeah,
him out of
yeah,
town.
yeah,
I'm with
yeah.
you. He can stay.
Well, that's kind of where I'm lobbying at. I'm not trying to lobby him for the starting job necessarily, but what happens if Trubisky gets hurt? Are you
Yeah.
throwing Kenny Pickett out there right away? I don't know that that's going to be the Steelers style. And that gets to the Mitchell Trubisky thing. And can he win this starting job? I think he was brought in with the idea of being a starter, but his contract doesn't scream starter money either. And that's the other thing. People were saying, oh, well, they could save $3 million if they cut Mason Rudolph. And what are they going to buy with that $3 million? What are they going to do?
Teddy Bridgewater.
Teddy, I thought Teddy was making 6 or 7. Maybe.
No, I'm just kidding.
I know,
that's what
Jacoby
they'd be able
Brissett
to
and
go
everything
by.
like
Would
that.
just be someone of equal talent
or
skill.
lesser, possibly, because
Yeah.
it's still the unknown. And I still think it'll be interesting to see who scouted Mason Rudolph. If he's no longer on the Steelers this year or next year, it'll be interesting to see where he lands, if he lands. I think he will, because I do think the teams looked at him in the pre-draft process, and they'll have 1 or 2 suitors for sure that'll say, hey, let's bring him in, and they'll at least have him as a backup. And he does have some NFL starting experience, which is invaluable, because usually when you're behind somebody like Ben Roethlisberger, you don't get that opportunity. Now you got a guy like Mitch Trubisky. He's kind of where Kenny Pickett is right now. He comes in, he's the top of the class. He was the 2nd overall pick with the Chicago Bears, and then everybody's going to say, well, he led a terrible Bears team to the playoffs, and he made a Pro Bowl in 2018. That's kind of disingenuous, to be completely honest. His leading receiver was Tariq Cohen, who's a running back. Jordan Howard almost ran for 1,000 yards. He was just shy, I don't know, 50 yards or something like that. And he ran for, let's say, 950. And he's had Allen Robinson as a wide receiver. He had Trey Burton, who was brought in as a tight end.
Their defense too. That's when they got Khalil Mack.
Their defense was like top in turnovers. They had like 20 some interceptions. They were tops against first downs. They allowed the fewest first downs of anybody in the league. They allowed the fewest points of anybody in the league, and that benefited because Mitch only threw like what? I'm sure I have it here. Hold on, I do. 24 touchdowns that season to 12 interceptions, 3,200 some yards, 66.5. On his completion percentage. But again, some of it's the dink and dunk stuff. There's leading receivers, Trey Burton, tight end, Tariq Cohen, running back. You're going to say, well, Matt Nagy, he ruined him. Well, he had some ups and downs. He has very similar numbers. I don't know if we have enough time for me to plow through all of them here, but we talked about this before, actually. Let's see. What was his final season there? 2020? So you go over his first 3 games. Mitch Trubisky, 51 and 86, sub 60%. So he's 59.3, 560 yards, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 87.4 rating, and 7 sacks. So that's the first 3 games. That's when he ends up not playing, and he ends up being inactive, et cetera, et cetera. And then he comes back, and he has 6 more games toward the tail end of the season. Green Bay, 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, 56.5 completion. Then he has the Lions, 76.4, just the 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 267 yards. You know what? It's going to be easier. Let me bring this up so everybody can actually see it on screen here. And
go follow us on YouTube. Like and subscribe.
Yeah. Like and subscribe. Let's see. I'm going to try and pull this up.
Get some of this action that you're missing on Spotify or Apple Music. You can't see us.
Here we go. And I try and put it here. Hopefully you could see it well enough, even with some of the ads that are floating around there. Yeah, it doesn't do too well with the tables.
Yeah,
with the
I can
stats,
see it.
but
I think Mitch, even though he's not, like, everyone thinks Kenny's the key factor here, Mitch is the key factor in the room, because if Mitch looks really good and wins the job, I think the Steelers will be really comfortable playing him and starting him. But if he looks bad, that's where the door just flies open for Kenny to start, and then even Mason to have a real chance. A lot is riding on Mitch Trubisky. I really believe that Kenny can still win the job even if Mitch looks good. I don't want to step on my own toes and contradict myself, because I said last show, if it's close, I'd rather just get Kenny out there and get going. But if Mitch looks like, a good starter and he has control of the offense and he's moving the ball down the field in preseason and during practices, I think the Steelers will be very comfortable starting Mitch. He's more of a Kenny Pickett style than Mason too. So Kenny
Yeah,
can
just
learn some stuff
more mobile.
watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's basically it. Like nothing too else. But yeah, he fits Kenny's style a little more than Mason does. So maybe Kenny can pick something up from Mitch. My cousin Kyle actually said that, and I agreed totally. I was like, Kenny's the headliner, and Mason is, devil's advocate over here, who every public enemy number one. But Mitch is actually like the key factor, like the sneaky key factor in the room is Trubisky. As much as I think my favorite to start is Kenny, I think Mitch's path is very clear.
Bridge quarterback. I hate
Yeah.
that word. I hate that word with the passion. But yeah, the only reason to go through some of this is to see where or how he fell out of favor. It's weird because it's like, okay, 72% complete. I mean, he's throwing 46, 34, 33 passes. Then there's one where he only throws 21 and he has a pick. And then he has like a couple of picks at the end. It's not the worst season in the world. 67% completion percentage, 2,000 yards, 16 to 8. This is Trubisky.
What year is that?
This was 2020, his final season in
Okay,
Chicago,
cool.
where Matt Nagy couldn't figure out if he wanted him or like Nick Foles to play for whatever freaking reason. So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
should've
When
just
he
let
yanked,
him-
yeah, when he yanked Mitch after the one interception.
yeah. So where I'm at with this is you just about hit the nail on the head with the same thing. It depends how gun shy the Steelers are throwing Kenny Pickett on the field right away. He was taken as a first-round pick. He is going to get his chance. It's just a matter of whether or not he gets that chance this year. And everybody that's buying jerseys, they're going to want to will him onto the field because it's the unknown that you don't know. You don't know if he's good or bad. You're just assuming he's great because of what he just did in college, and he's a first-round pick. And this is what the Steelers did. But what they really did was they set themselves up where they have 3 quarterbacks that can maybe win them some games. They're going to figure out which ones can. And that's why you don't get rid of Mason Rudolph, and then you have absolutely 0 people who've taken an NFL snap in the Matt Canada offense. And the reason you feel more confident, and the reason why we're even saying Mitch Trubisky is probably leaning towards the week 1 favorite to start here, is because when you take a look at, let me see, we got it here somewhere, Mitch Trubisky career. Let's see. Maybe we just want the full one here. 50 starts with the Bears. That's the reason why, because he has the experience. He has experience to maybe know how to read a certain defense, throw the ball away, whatever. Even if it's bad experience, it's still experience. And that's the reason why somebody like Mason Rudolph will get a chance somewhere else. Maybe not as a starter, but as a backup. It's the reason why Colt McCoy is still around, or Blaine Gabbert's still around, or geez, just name the guys that are still have opportunities, or at least still backups. You forget that they're even around in the league. It's
Hell yeah,
because of
dude. Hell yeah.
experience.
You can win. You can win some games. You got value to you. I'm not that far gone with these Yinzers who hate Mason that think he's just going to be out of the NFL next year. I've long said numerous times today, I think he's a fine backup quarterback. So I think he'll stick for sure somewhere else. I don't know where, but like if he's gone after, watch the Steelers re-sign him to be like the backup for years to come.
The next Charlie Batch, yeah.
Poetry, honestly, because that would make people so mad. I don't care if he's backup. But the whole point of the show was to just give our 2 cents and say what we think is going to happen with the week 1 starter. We kind of got into the thick of it with Mason, but I'm done like arguing about Mason, dude. Not even arguing, but like you get into these arguments with people on Twitter or like texting or wherever, and you and I kind of did it softly there without getting mad at each other, but it just becomes a big stat match. You just have a stat off. Like, oh, look at these scenarios I have, and then the other guy's like, well, look at these scenarios I have, and then nobody wins. You just cherry pick and you just name these specific scenarios that help your side, and I physically can't do it anymore. Like I've made my stance known on Mason.
Well, you're going to have to do it a little more because we've got many more shows. I mean, it's only May. It's going to happen. And the reason is because you've only seen like 10 real games. Yeah, he has like 17 appearances or whatever. He took a victory formation knee in another game, so it counts as an appearance. He gets a Letterman's jacket for it. Hooray. You know what I mean? So he gets the extra, I don't know if he gets an incentive, like an extra 2 pennies on his NFL check or whatever for the week because he got to play in a game. It's like,
that's
yay.
what he was trying to make in Ben's farewell game, because he was trying to get on for the knee, and Ben was like, no. I'll take the knee for my last game at Highfield. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that wasn't going to happen. And then Ben had to do like the whole NASCAR victory lap too. But that's the reason you have to have the stat off as the unknown. And there's still unknown with Trubisky. Is Trubisky really washed? What happens if Trubisky does well? You won't see Kenny Pickett this year. And I
You
think
don't think at all?
I think even if Trubisky doesn't do well, I don't know that Kenny Pickett's going to be the backup. I don't think Kenny Pickett is. I just look at the way the Steelers operate. I'm not going to say Landry Jones playing over like
Do you
Bruce
think? So
Gradkowski
you
or
think
something. I
all
look at the same
three?
type thing.
You think all three are safe? Then you think Pickett, Trubisky, and Mason are all on the roster come the
Oh
start
yeah.
of the season?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think
Okay.
Mason's the backup. I think Trubisky's the starter. Just to get to our point that's down
Yeah.
there on the bar here, as we're getting up against it. Yeah, absolutely. I think you sit Pickett the first year. I think the reason is very obvious. He was the 20th pick, 20 different picks, and 31 other NFL teams who could have traded back into the first round if they felt that. I'm not going to say all 31 because not everybody needs it as a starter. But if somebody felt that strongly about him to make him a week 1 starter, the Steelers might have had to do a little more than just sit in place at pick 20 and wait for that Kenny Pickett to come to them. I think they're happier in a pick and slop that it happened. I'm happier in a pick and slop that it happened. I know we were on the Malik Willis train, but if we were having the same conversation and Malik Willis was the first round pick, I don't think we're discussing Malik Willis being a week 1 starter whatsoever. Whereas we are with Kenny Pickett, because Kenny Pickett is the guy of this class. He was the one that's the most pro ready. And you also, let's throw the bias in there. Kind of the hometown guy. He's the one you paid the most attention to. So you kind of have an idea, or at least a bias slant towards, look what this guy did at Pitt. Maybe he could do that with the Steelers too. So that's kind of where I see it, barring any injuries. Of course, this is a way too early type deal. We can get the training camp and just see Mason turn into a duck. Not the unintended or anything, but look what happened to Josh Dobbs.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was supposed to have this. He had a tremendous preseason, and that forced the team to just say goodbye, Landry Jones. We have guys with more upside because we just drafted Rudolph, and we have Dobbs, who led like 6 scoring drives in the preseason. I mean, he looked like a leader out there. He never looked like that again. He didn't look like that even in camp or preseason. He was missing some easy throws. He was committing some turnovers and that, but they still had enough. There was still enough. Again, the legs, like we said with Oladokun, mobility, the smarts, that he had value to be at least on the roster. But it was like a very long shot that he was ever going to see the field after, 2018 or whatever, when he got into that Raiders game. So yeah, that's the way I see that pecking order. And yeah, I do see Oladokun also on the practice squad. They'll have 4 quarterbacks, I think.
Yeah, that's where we differ, and that's what people tune in for. You want some excitement, people. I think my early prediction for week 1 starter is Kenny Pickett. I'm not going to change off that. I think the difference in looking at the situation, well, he lasted to the 20th pick, so NFL teams think he's not ready. Again, here comes the stat off. You could point to guys like Derek Carr, who got to start right away as a 2nd-round pick, or Russell Wilson. They went into camp with incumbent starters. The Raiders, people forget this, but they went out of their way to acquire Matt Schaub to be the starter that year. Derek Carr shows up as a 2nd-round pick, beats him outright, wins the job. Russell Wilson, as everyone knows, the Seahawks threw a buttload of money at Matt Flynn, and Russell Wilson beats him out. So just because Pickett's the 20th pick, I don't think it's crazy to think that he can come in and start right away. You've alluded to this yourself, and I subscribe to it myself. I thought there were a lot of teams that were in front of the Steelers this year that necessarily didn't have to take a quarterback because their rosters were just so shit. Like, you look at the Panthers, the Falcons, and the Seahawks, and those were the 3 teams everyone thought were going to be in the way of the Steelers taking a quarterback in the top 10. Well, they were 3 of the worst rosters in the whole NFL. They don't have the time to try to take a guess on quarterback right now. They need to get the best player available and construct their rosters, because I can't tell you more than 10 players total from the Panthers, Seahawks, and Falcons. So circumstances affect the draft every year and when guys get picked. So I'm not going to hold the falling to 20th overall against his chances of winning the starting job right away. It all comes back to, I just don't think Mason and Mitch together as one, the double-headed M&M, I don't think they are good enough to really think that, well, Kenny's going to come in and sit for a year because the Steelers already have the starter figured out. It's between one of these two. I think it's so open because Mitch has a lot more starting experience, and we've seen what he can do. Mason a little less, but neither one of them has any ground to stand on being like, this is my room. I've earned it. I've shown so many good things on tape. So that's where it becomes realistic for me to see Kenny as the week 1 starter because of all these things. You're right. If we had drafted Malik Willis instead, I'm not saying he starts week 1. I said I thought Malik probably had to start at least or sit at least half the season, probably the whole season. Kenny's the only one of the class that I thought had any chance of coming in and starting as a rookie, genuinely. Unless, like I said, you got halfway through the season and then maybe give Malik a shot. But Kenny was always viewed differently from the rest of this class as somebody who could start early. And that is the part of the argument that I was on, is I thought that if he went to Carolina, he'd start right away. If he went to the Saints, he would start right away. He came to Pittsburgh, and I think he starts right away.
That's an interesting thought if he went to New Orleans and started right away. I mean, Carolina, perhaps. Maybe Matt Rule's feeling a little bit of heat on his seat. That could be the case. I don't know. Dennis Allen, though, if it's Sean Payton, I don't think Sean Payton rushes him out there. They still don't know what they want to do with Taysom Hill, but you do have Jameis Winston coming off an injury. But the interesting one is, though, Mac Jones ends up playing over Cam Newton, and I wonder if it had anything to do. Well, part of this is the COVID protocols. Cam Newton, not to be funny, unvaccinated, and there was all the talk about how he's going to hurt his team, blah, 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 because of that, because there were two sets of rules as to whether if you were or weren't vaccinated at that point, and this was the preseason, and Newton can't play, and Mac Jones ends up playing, and Newton ends up getting like outright cut, so you don't know what ends up happening behind closed doors where he's MFing a team or something as well. But you went from the veteran and just jumped the shark straight to Jones, who we weren't sure was going to be the guy. There's going to be some struggles if Kenny Pickett is the guy. I'm not going to argue with you that if he has, right now with the unknown, he has the highest ceiling of all of them. There's no doubt about it. I don't know where his floor is, though. You kind of know maybe where Trubisky and Mason's floors are, and I think I just feel those guys are so similar in so many different ways. They offer you different things. Maybe Mason has the better deep ball arm than Trubisky, but Trubisky has the better mobility. So you're going to offer different things. It depends what they're going to try and do with this system. Is Matt Canada's system going to work out? Let's not forget, that there's some of that trickle down playbook, whatever, over to Pitt and the similarities of when Matt Canada was involved and, he was around. And this is some of the things that the Steelers, they glean from being University of Pittsburgh. There's a lot of the same things that Kenny Pickett was doing there. So that could very well translate and bode very well if he doesn't have. This is the difference. And they were talking about this on the XM radio also just recently. They were talking about how the wide receivers are more pro ready now because they're running more routes, and because of the way the contracts are structured, you got to get players on you can't wait to put players on the field now because there's no guarantee that you're going to bring them back after those 4 years or even 5 years, and the money that's going to cost you, and teams are winning by having the cheap quarterback contract. So there's a lot to what you just said that could be true. I'm old school, and I would like to see him sit like Patrick Mahomes, for example, for a year. But the difference is you don't already have Ben Roethlisberger there. And that's where you make a good point with the entrenched starter. You got to have one of the two. Yes, Mason is a veteran guy because, like you said, he's been around the NFL for a long time now. And that's valuable to teams also. That's why you still see Jacoby Brissett and these names that we mentioned bounce around in the league, because this isn't new to them coming into OTAs and coming into training camps or coming into preseason. None of this is new. Maybe learning a different playbook or some different plays, or they follow someone else around that was a coach on one of their previous stays, wherever they were. That's where the value comes in. Maybe one of the two veterans, but we've already mentioned we know like kind of where they're at on this. If you see more upside, maybe Pickett is the guy. But here's my other caveat: the other side of the coin. I was watching the terrible Batman Forever with Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones, Riddler and Two-Face. He's flipping the coin, and I introduced my kid to the old school Batmans. She was a little freaked out, 8 years old, so she's a little freaked out by the new one with the glittery vampire guy. Excellent movie, by the way. I was just making a joke at Robert Pattinson, but
wait, the new Batman, yeah, dude, it was sick. Yeah.
Was
Michael Keaton, Pittsburgh legend, baby.
Yes, absolutely. I was just about to say that. You stole my thunder off of that. He had the intro to one of the games too, but the two-sided coin, the other side of the coin, Kenny Pickett will struggle. Now, how bad is that struggle? It's valuable experience struggle. So even if the Steelers, let's say it's Mike Tomlin's first ever losing season, they're not going to jump the shark and go get another quarterback right away next season. Jacksonville Jaguars are not looking to replace Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence last year, all 17 games. This is why I don't look at quarterback records, by the way. 3-14. I think you could say he had a garbage team around him for sure there. You don't have a garbage team and then make the playoffs. That's what my argument with the Bears. But I do think the coaching was suspect, as we saw.
to say the least.
Yeah, 59.6 completion. So he's under the 60% is the benchmark in the NFL. That's where you want to be as an NFL quarterback. 12 touchdowns to 17 interceptions, 32 sacks. That's
Baker's rookie season. 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. That's the same exact stat line.
Yeah. So, hey, that's where I'm at with it. We're up against it. Any closing thoughts there, Flash?
No, man, that was fun. Yeah, it's always fun to like air our thoughts like that and like get everything out on tape for people to see, because sometimes I feel like it's hard to really get your full it's hard to get your really full point across in a tweet or like even in text, because people are so, it's either white or black, it's 100% or it's not. And some people get so angry when you offer your opinion on a stance because they think you're just not open to any other scenario. I think Kenny's going to be the starter, but I don't think it's crazy to think Mitch or Mason, could be the starter. Like these are all possible realities. And I'm just excited to see how it unfolds, really. I think we've got a nice battle going into camp. I think the Steelers will do what's best for the Steelers. And if Kenny Pickett wins the job by week 1, then the door is open to possibly trading Mitch, and getting some kind of value in return. I'd take a 5th or a 6th, hypothetically, if Kenny won the job, make Mason the backup, because you don't need to keep Mason and Mitch if Kenny wins the job. So that's kind of a positive to Kenny winning the job.
Yeah, that's very good. But I look at the 2019 year. Yeah, I think you're right, because then it's like a sink or swim situation, and you don't want to pull the young guy out and just totally screw the pooch on his development. So that's actually a very excellent point.
Thanks, dude. You're just saying that.
Hey, here's another big difference, I think, with Mitch Trubisky versus Mitch Trubisky coming out of college, top of his class, versus Kenny Pickett. Okay. Mitchell Trubisky, 572 pass attempts, right? 31 games played, 41 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. So 31 games to Pickett's 52. And he has 1,045 pass attempts. He has 16. I'm sorry, that's completions. I got that. I botched that. So 1,674 attempts to Mitch Trubisky's 572. A ton of more experience as a college quarterback. This is what's going to suck when you get a new general manager other than Kevin Colbert. We're usually pretty good at picking the brain of what Kevin Colbert likes, and he likes players with pedigree and experience. So this is experience. Pickett, 12-6 TD to interceptions, 2018, 13-9, 13-9. He does twice, and then the 42-7 with 4,319. As he is playing, he was redshirted, so he played 5 years in college, and at that final season, obviously, just tears it up. Pitt, ACC champions, et cetera, et cetera. So 4,319 yards, 40. I mean, so. Yeah. If you go back and you're even like, well, he didn't do this throughout his whole college career. I mean, come on now. If you're not scorching the earth, like I've been saying this about Justin Fields, and you look at that money and everything, and how can you not come out? But that extra year at Ohio State probably would have helped him a lot more in the pros. He's going to land on a crappy team regardless, more than likely, unless he lasted till pick 20 to the Steelers this year. Then, that would have been pretty wild. But yeah, major difference there. That's closing my thought, was the college experience with both of them. You know what? Just out of curiosity, let's take a look. What did Mason Rudolph have here? Because
he started a long time, dude.
Yeah, he did too.
I think as a freshman he was playing, because I remember seeing him in his highlight package. There was a point where he was wearing number 10. I think that was his freshman year, because he wanted 2.
Of course you would remember that. 4-year starter, 1,447 attempts, 63.2 completed, 13,618 yards, about 1,000 behind
and he
Kenny.
was a Heisman hopeful. There were people, dude. He was like, remember we talked about Sam Howell being like the first overall, way too early mock draft guy last year. Mason Rudolph was a first round, way too early mock draft guy. A lot, because I remember knowing his name, like going into the college season, and I wasn't a big college football fan at the time. I usually just catch up on college ball when I can, especially during the draft season. But I knew Mason Rudolph's name going into that season because he was viewed as like a top quarterback prospect.
Oh yeah, well, you have the high hopes of someone coming out of college. Kenny Pickett's 81-32 touchdown to interception ratio, and you could put that up against Mason Rudolph's 92-26 on fewer attempts. Ooh, does that necessarily mean?
they were air raid, bro. He threw it deep a lot. His highlights is all him going deep. Like he's not arguing from me. He's got a good deep ball, and he can air it out for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, it all depends. Like, you're throwing out stats, and it's like, well, this guy threw for more of this on less attempt. It's like, what does it translate to the pro game? I mean, so we're setting you up also for disappointment, by the way. Just say it. But yeah, Kenny's got to be allowed to fail. Point taken. Time to put a bow on the show. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Follow this guy too over here at Ziggy Flash NFL. And follow me at Joe_Kuzma, Kuzma. Let's give a little bit of personal shout outs here for ourselves. We kind of deserve a little bit of the pat on the back. We like it when you review the show. We like it when you subscribe. So please do so. That helps us create more great content to each and every one of you that are out there. So until next time, boy, this one's going to be, I have a feeling this one's going to catch fire and get out of control. It's going to be like the Cuyahoga River many years ago. And those type of things happen in Cleveland. That's the dumpster fire. A river catches fire. You know what I mean? So anyways, my name's Joe. His name is Zach. Until next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.